Hey everybody, it is Scribelight, and with me as always is Monkey. Hi Monkey.
Hello. I am going to have to mute myself because there's going to be a little bit of noise down here. Wait 1 second.
Uh-oh.
Hey.
It sounds like we have an invasion of a grand monkey.
Look.
Who's on?
Uh-oh.
Who is that?
Hello.
Hello. Subscribe.
No.
She's going to see her daddy outside, so you don't rank today.
No, I don't rank up there with Daddy.
Nobody does.
Oh, shucks. Oh, well, maybe someday.
I was just kidding. Did you say hi, subscribe? No.
No. Like, well, fine. Jeez, never mind.
I know we got a movie thing to do, but real quick, I want to point this out. The other day, she just thought she saw Scribe on my computer screen and yelled, I want to go see Scribe. So she loves you. You just rate under Daddy.
Yeah, it's a day on and a day off, depending. Yes, I would be surprised if I rated above Daddy. But well, hello everyone. We are back with another movie review / dissection / takedown, depending on the mood and the day. So today's subject of conversation is Under Siege with Steven Seagal, 1992, directed by Andrew Davis. This was actually the second Steven Seagal movie that Andrew Davis had directed. He had also done Above the Law, which I also haven't seen in a long time, but I don't know. I keep thinking Above the Law is better than Under Siege in my mind, just because it seems to be more classic Seagal.
Yeah, I didn't remember a lot of Under Siege. I got to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It was like watching a new movie again. That's how memorable it was.
Mm-hmm.
But as I watched, I got to admit, it was better than I remembered it being. It wasn't a horrible movie. It wasn't a good movie.
No, it wasn't a good movie. So all the bits and pieces that I remembered from the trailers way back when, and all of like the zingers and things, were all there, and they all came back to me. My more seasoned eye and thinking mind found lots of problems with the story and the plot. Of course, it's a dumb action movie, I know, and I do this every time we do one of these movies now, but I cannot stop my brain from working, even when I'm watching a dumb action movie. We'll get into that as we go.
On that note, I can do it for some. I can, but I could even do it for this movie, and I have a criticism of this movie you probably won't even touch on.
Okay.
But there are parts of this. There are large parts of this movie that I really enjoyed watching, and it was the more absurd parts that it's just like, no, fuck this. That's no.
Well, I have, so just for reference, I'm not going to say it right now. When we get there, we'll get there. But I have written down. So whenever I do one of these, I grab like 3 or 4 sheets of blank paper so I can take a bunch of notes. In the middle of the movie, or actually, well, maybe 3/4 of the way through, I had to stop the film. I needed to grab a whole separate piece of paper just to write down the biggest plot hole in the entire film. And it's not, and I'm not nitpicking even. I mean, it's not one of those really like nitpicky little things. This is a gigantic plot hole in the entire film. And I've got it written down. So I want you to know. So if we get to the point where you want to say your biggest problem with it and it ends up matching mine, let me know, because I'm going to read mine out first because I have it written down and we'll see if we match. Sure. Okay. Because I want to do like a whole Karnak thing. Like I got it in an envelope. I already have it written down. Okay. And for those of you who don't know who Karnak was, watch some old Johnny Carson sometime.
Yeah, we're way too old.
All right, so let's see. So yeah, this film was very, very pro-military. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, they had the support of the U.S. Navy in making this thing, which is why I think a lot of sequences in the movie were in them to sort of show off naval procedure and technical exactitude and things like that.
They were definitely working with the Navy. A lot of that was filmed on ship. There's things in there. There's one scene. Yeah, I'll go ahead and it's not spoiling it. We're talking about the whole damn movie anyway.
Yeah.
The scene where the plane comes in. I think they said it was an F-15.
You mean the one that was doing the flyby?
Yeah.
That was F-18.
Okay, F-18. They had F-18s back then. I should have paid more attention. But anyway, the scene where that gets blown out of the air, the plane flying next to the ship, if you look, that is computer generated. that is not.
I don't know if it was. I don't know if it was CGI. It was probably a model. They hadn't really gotten to that.
Well, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm using modern language.
Yeah, okay,
It was
good. Yeah, it was a
it was
composite.
cut in. That was not real.
That was a composite by all. Yeah, they didn't actually blow up a plane next to a ship. But,
well, they didn't even fly the plane next to the ship. That's not a. You can see the plane actually makes some weird sideways movements.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the original Death Star blowing up. It's silly.
Yeah, it kind of more fell apart than blew up in little pieces and things.
Yeah, but there were a lot of parts of that were filmed on an actual ship.
Yeah,
and you don't do that without the Navy's approval.
Exactly, which is why, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't see it in here. I should have checked the. Let's see. I should have checked the credits more closely, but I believe actual naval personnel had cameos all over the place in that movie. Because there were a couple of guys there that just looked like that. I don't think that's an actor. I think that's a guy who's actually a Navy veteran that they put in there as a tribute.
Yeah, it's they use. I know in the movie Navy SEALs, they shot that on a ship my friend's dad worked on, and for extras they just used the crew.
Sure, yeah, and there's a couple of guys there who I bet were. Since the whole movie sort of surrounds the idea that Hawaii and Pearl Harbor are under threat by this whole plan, I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of the guys I saw in the background there weren't actual veterans of Pearl Harbor, World War II. But I don't know. Let's see. So let's get into it. So we start off, first off, this is one of the few movies where Steven Seagal does not have a ponytail, but I swear to God, it sure looks like they chopped that sucker off 5 minutes before they started filming.
It does. Yeah, he still has the same hairstyle.
Yeah, it's right there. It's just, and the back of his hair is a little rough looking.
Here we go. This is the first criticism I have that I don't know that you would even pick up on.
Okay.
There are several haircuts in this that would not exist in the military.
Yeah.
His and Gary Busey's. Oh my God.
Gary Busey's big poof hair. Yeah, that was too long, too fucking long.
You can get away with a little bit. Let's be honest. The Navy is not as hardcore as, say, the Marines. But you're still not going to get away with long fucking hair. You're just not.
Right.
It's especially not at that time.
Not right after Gulf War and everything else. And let's see. So we start off. Our main character, and I'll make a joke about this later when we get done with this movie. But our main character's name is Casey Ryback.
Yes.
Or Chief Ryback, who is presented to us in the beginning as simply the ship's cook. Of course, we know he can't be just a cook because he's Steven Seagal. And the first sort of conflict is between him and the XO of the ship, Gary Busey, because he's not Ryback does not wear a dress uniform, and they're getting ready to, I guess, pull in or celebrate the 50th anniversary since Pearl Harbor, and this takes place on the USS Missouri, which is one of the ships involved in that incident, I guess I should say, that attack. It was, well, they say, and I don't know if it's historically accurate or not, that the Missouri was the ship that fired the first shot in the Gulf War of the 90s, which may or may not be true. I don't know.
I would be surprised if it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Because that would be a pretty easy fact to check. And like they used actual footage of George Bush when he went to the decommissioning and or to the Pearl Harbor ceremony. You have a super chat there.
Oh, do I? No, sorry. Super chat. Thank you, Snowbirth. I am Kekistan. Figured I'd chill one last time to one of the Lords of the Night crew before they knock me out and stick scalpels and lasers in my face. Good luck on both streams today. What are they doing to your face? Are you like hiding from the mob? I hope you're okay.
How cool would that be if one of our viewers was like the dude from Goodfellas?
How cool would it be if one of our viewers was a mass killer?
but a mobster? I mean,
okay, a mobster. Yeah, I mean that kind of forgives some things.
Here's another great part about the movie. It doesn't even get into the movie. The poster and the cover art for like the DVD. Nowhere in the fucking movie. Steven Seagal never wears Navy choker whites in the movie.
At the very end, was he in the black outfit or the white outfit?
He was in the black Navy suit.
Okay, yeah, you're right. He never was in. Yeah, it's true. And that I tell you, that photo. I just created a thumbnail for this stream once it's over with. That photo of Steven Seagal's head above the uniform is so cropped in there.
Yes, it is.
It's like his neck disappears. It's like, okay.
Because he never wore it. But yeah, he starts out refusing to wear. He's not even wearing a uniform.
No, nothing.
He's in civvies.
Real quick, Snubberth says it is nasal surgery. Okay.
Oh,
so
well,
getting
good.
Your schnoz worked on. Yeah.
Fixes whatever you need.
The closest he ever gets to wearing a uniform is his cook's outfit we see later on. But we'll get there. So we meet Casey Ryback, who is the cook. He's got a contentious relationship with the XO, who is his Krill or Creel. I forget
Something
what
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So Gary Busey. Commander Krill. I tell you what, all the bad guy names in this movie sound like bad guy names.
Oh yeah, they do.
I'll tell you what, between Krill and when we get to Tommy Lee Jones. So the deal here is that they're having this big celebration on the ship, and it's also happens to be the captain's birthday. And the captain we meet, and in one of the first scenes we see him in, his eyes are moving a lot. I think he was reading cue cards because,
Yeah.
And we're given the idea that the captain has a sort of special relationship with Casey Ryback for some reason, and we get into that later on in the movie. So there's all this buildup. There's going to be this party, and Ryback and his cooks are getting ready to feed a whole bunch of people, and the bouillabaisse and all this other stuff. Let's see. Let me move on to set. The movie's set on the Missouri. Most of it actually was filmed on the USS Alabama, which is a museum, because they have more control over something that's more stationary like that. And we see George Bush in stock footage along with Dick Cheney. And then one of the actors, one of the things about this movie, there's so many like mini little cameos of actors who would go on to do bigger things later on. And the first one that I saw was sort of Ryback's little, not sidekick, but friend. And I forget what the character's name is, but the actor would go on to play Tuco Salamanca in Breaking Bad, one of the bigger villains of the first couple seasons.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And let's see. And we also see that while they're cooking, there's some emphasis on Casey Ryback's knife play skills. We see him throwing a knife at a target and chopping up stuff and hitting it perfectly. Yeah. So then it's announced to Ryback that all of the catering and everything's going to be brought in from off ship. So you guys don't have to do anything, get out of here. And Gary Busey's being very authoritarian about it and kind of moving everybody around. He confronts the captain at one point. The captain's like, "You've just completely gone over your remit by having a helicopter land on here without permission." He's like, "Well, sir, it's for your surprise birthday party. I'm sorry. I just don't have to think." Oh, okay. I'm like,
and the admiral's coming.
And the admiral's coming. Like, ooh, he's like, oh, okay. Let's see.
The admiral would definitely set it up so that a captain did not know a helicopter was going to be landing on his fucking ship.
Right.
Happens all the time in the Navy.
Yeah, the whole sentiment of a surprise party kind of ends when you're talking about military logistics. Sorry. But we eventually get the hint that something about our XO, it's obviously Gary Busey, and he seems a little evil and stuff. He seems a little off. We cut to the... Oh, sorry.
Real quick, they overplayed the... And maybe it is just watching it with a critical eye years and years later, but they way overplayed how secretive they were being about this. There's no point in this where I thought, sure, they're just planning a surprise party.
Right.
And they tried selling it like they were, but there was no fucking way that was what was going on.
Thank you, Pincalo. Erika Eleniak, her most memorable role. Why? Because boobs. That's why. Yes, we will get to the grandeur.
So nice.
The grandeur of Erika Eleniak soon. I forgot. In the course of convincing Ryback and his people to get out of the galley because the food was bringing in, Krill spits into the broth that we've heard so much about to this point, the bouillabaisse. Just to piss off Ryback, and Ryback ends up punching Krill, putting a big scar on his face for the rest of the movie. And they lock him in the freezer, the meat locker. Hello?
I'm here, just noise going on here.
Oh, yeah, so they lock Ryback in the meat locker rather than put him in the brig because reasons. And then they get Private Nash, the wettest behind the ears kid you could ask for to guard him.
There's a little butt dancing behind me.
Is there a little grand monkey dancing?
Can you say hi, Scribe? Hi, Scribe.
Holy crap! Jesus, grand monkey's got smoker's lung.
She's just standing here looking at the screen.
Oh,
Yeah. So that whole scene was just silly.
yeah.
He beats up the military guards, and then they don't take him to the brig. They lock him in the freezer because in order to go to the brig, you have to have the old man's consent. The old man in this case being the captain.
Yeah, the captain.
Common military name term, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they stick him in the freezer, which, by the way, shows no sign of being cold.
I was about to say, you never see Steven Seagal's breath. You never see him like rubbing up his arms or anything or trying to keep himself warm. He just kind of stands there the whole time. It's supposed to be like 40. I mean, and 40 degrees seems a little warm for a meat locker, but what
yeah. There's a part where one of his guys asked where he is, and they told him he's locked in the meat locker. What's 40 degrees in there?
40
Not
degrees.
In a meat locker. That's how you get salmonella.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Be at least 32.
But somewhere in there, we cut to the soon to arrive party people in this giant, what is it, like a Huey helicopter? I'm not good with military hardware names. So it's one of those big double.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a big double helicopter, and inside we see several very familiar faces. One of which being Chief O'Brien.
Miles O'Brien.
Miles O'Brien. Cole Meany is in this. He plays a character named Dahmer. Now, I can't recall if Jeffrey Dahmer had been revealed in 1992 or by the time this film was made, but every time they said Dahmer, I'm like, oh shit, I can't.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Jeffrey Dahmer. But also we see Erika Eleniak, who actually was Miss July '89 in real life.
That I didn't know, but she definitely deserves it. Oh my God! She pops out. Damn.
Oh yeah. So Erika Eleniak was a Playboy playmate. Well, I guess technically you never stopped being a Playboy playmate, and she actually was Miss July of '89. And her pictorial theme for her appearance in Playboy July '89 as the centerfold was nautical.
Oh,
it was like, her being in sailor outfits or the lack thereof and such things. So there's the whole thing's kind of a line here where she's sort of playing herself after a fashion. And sitting next to her is Tommy Lee Jones in one of the most nutball roles I've seen him in, probably.
You talked before about Robin Williams in the movie you liked him in best was
1 Hour Photo.
1 Hour Photo.
Yes.
That was for me. That was me for Tommy Lee in this one because, how do I want to put this? Tommy Lee actually looked older in this movie than I've seen him in anything else since.
Yeah.
But he played it so well. I mean, of all of the characters in this movie, he was the most believable for me.
Well, he was the most fun to watch. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing is that this was, when I saw this movie, this was the first time I had ever seen Tommy Lee Jones, but he didn't, when I was a kid at least, but he didn't like sort of register in my mind until a year later in the next Andrew Davis film, The Fugitive, where Tommy Lee Jones really had his breakout moment as the U.S. Marshal chasing Harrison Ford. So really, I think that their experience together on this film is what led to Tommy Lee Jones really getting that break a year later, which is, good for him because that movie was awesome. And he in that movie was great.
Well, even when he comes out as the rock star, because they land and they set up the party and they actually have a party for him.
Mm-hmm.
Except it's not really for him, but they put on this huge party for the crew to get them onto the mess deck. And they drug Titty Girl. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Erika Eleniak.
Erika, thank you.
Yeah.
But he doesn't come off as cheesy to me. He really didn't, which could have been so easy in that role.
Yeah, no, for what it was, he played it straight in the sense that, he wasn't hamming it up so much. There was a couple of moments where it was a little bit cartoonish, which kind of falls in line with some of the things the character said. But, I forgot to say that as they're leaving Private Nash to guard Ryback, Krill takes him aside and says, because Nash just came on the ship, he doesn't know anybody, and Krill says, Ryback, he hates officers and he hates America. I was like, he hates America. So Tommy Lee's jumping around, and we find out so he's with the band, and I guess the band's name is Bad Billy and the Bail Jumpers.
Yes.
And it's like a harmonica blues sort of band, and they're all playing up and everything, and they got everybody down in the ship's lower decks. Thank you, Snub Earth. You ever see the black and white TV series The Fugitive? My dad watched that movie just because he loved the series. I did see episodes of that when I was growing up, I think on Nick at Night or something like that. So yeah, I did see those things, and it was really. Oh, sorry.
I'd say they started playing them after the movie came out.
Yeah, they started reissuing them, and it was really interesting to me growing up because I made this connection. I don't know why, because I was just too smart for my own good, I guess. I saw the Fugitive episodes after I'd seen The Incredible Hulk, and I was just like, oh, the Incredible Hulk is just The Fugitive, but with a giant green monster. I mean, he goes from town to town. He kind of helps people out, and then of course stuff happens, that kind of thing. So, anyway, not exactly a new concept. You got like have gun will travel and that kind of deal. So, I'm going off on a tangent. So anyway, yeah. So Erika Eleniak complains about motion sickness from the helicopter ride. I think Krill gives her some, motion sickness pills, which actually end up knocking her out eventually. And they set her aside to go into her dressing room and change. And of course, the outfit she comes out in, oh, the cleavage, oh, the tight pants, oh.
This is one of my favorite parts of the movie. The band, the caterers, they're all actually good at what they do.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're also cold-blooded killers.
Yeah, and one of the things, so I'll get to this, I'll save this for a minute, I guess.
But they couldn't get a titty lady to jump out who also wanted to kill people.
Yeah, it was really odd. It's like of everybody that came in that helicopter, the one person who had nothing to do with anything was the entertainment.
Yeah.
And I just thought that if they had made her one of the villains, that would have been so fucking cool. Because like Ryback having to decide to like punch a woman and all that other fun stuff, that's some really interesting stuff. But no, oh well. Que sera. So as the party's going on and everybody's sort of distracted, Tommy Lee Jones on stage calls out to the crowd and he says, "Hey, who's the highest ranking officer in the room?" And the crowd parts ways. And the guy says, "I am. I'm." I forget what he was. He was like chief of
the XO.
Yeah, he was the XO. No, he was the communications officer. Yeah. And then Tommy Lee Jones pulls out a gun and shoots the guy in the head. And at that point, everything starts going downhill because they start rounding up everybody. All the caterers start pulling out their machine guns that they smuggled on board somehow. And then Gary Busey, who had come out in drag earlier on to sort of make fun of stuff and like, I don't know, just be a goofball.
Another part which makes no sense. There's no reason for him to have done that.
No, there's absolutely no reason for him to have done that. It's like he could have gone, because what he does is he does this drag deal where he like dances around for the crowd and like seems all, fun. He then just immediately marches up to the captain's office or the captain's quarters and kills the guy, shoots him.
Yep.
So kills the captain. Let's see, where are we at? Oh yeah. So, and then as the guns start going off in the freezer, down below in the galley, Ryback says, "Nash, you hear that? That's gunfire." And I'm like, how the fuck are you hearing any of that? In a ship that's made in a deep freeze underneath 17,000 tons of steel above your head.
You would still hear the pops. You really would. You'd be surprised what you can hear below deck.
Really? Okay.
The part that was really fucked up about that is that the ensign Nash there has no idea what gunfire sounds like.
Yeah. And the other thing is,
he's just been to Annapolis, but he doesn't know the sound of fucking gunfire.
Well, here's the other failing, and it comes up in a few minutes, or a few minutes into the film. The gunfire goes off. Ryback says, "Hey Nash, that's gunfire." So Ryback hears this in the galley. Okay. The bridge doesn't hear it. The captain's office didn't hear it. The communications center or the comm, whatever the control center is, they didn't hear it because when they eventually storm those places, the captain's office, the bridge, the control center, everybody's doing their jobs. Nobody notices. Yeah. Nobody knows anything's going on. Like, okay, you can have it one way or the other. Either the gunfire is audible to people on other parts of the ship or it isn't. And it's just like, okay. That was one of the sort of like, okay, plot hole. I'll look past it more or less. And like, okay. But yeah, here's the gunfire. And then there's this big long sequence of getting all the crew which at one point they said were operating with a skeleton crew. That did not look like a skeleton crew.
Yeah, they were supposedly operating with a skeleton crew because they're going to decommission the Missouri, which would make sense if they're just taking it back to port to retire it. But yeah, that wasn't a skeleton crew. It was smaller than a full complement for a big ship, but
sure.
My favorite part of this whole sequence, they're rounding everybody up, and for some reason, they have guys on the very top of the tower rappelling down.
Yeah, I thought for a second there, I thought those were like good guys. I didn't understand what was going on. I thought, is that like, did some SWAT guys or something notice the gunfire and they're sweeping in to save the day? No, it's like, why are they doing that?
The bad guys who climbed to the very top of the outside of the tower to rappel down to capture like 3 guys who were doing roving guards.
Yeah, and
it's a good thing they jumped where they did, because that's right where the guard happened to be going across.
Yeah, it was just like, okay, it's just like just to show off, I guess, or somebody thought that looked cool.
Yeah.
But they round everybody.
It looked really cool, but it was really stupid.
They round up most of the crew and they seal them in the forecastle or whatever you call that part. I saw it on they showed it on the monitor a couple times, and it's spelled like forecastle, but they said it a different way, so I don't know Navy lingo or.
Yep, I'm with you on that one. I know how it's spelled. I do not know how it's pronounced. And I tried listening for it the second time they said it.
And as they're rounding everybody up, at one point, Gary Busey kind of shows off his villainy, because one of the guys jumps out of line to attack one of the terrorists, and he punches the guy, and then the terrorist knocks him down and blows him away. And then Gary Busey pulls out not Gary Busey, sorry, Tommy Lee Jones from up in the stairwell. He pulls out a gun and shoots another guy, and he says, "If you try anything, I will kill you and the man next to you," and all this other stuff. I'm like, oh shit, now move. And I was like, okay. And there's always there's this implied notion with some of the language that Tommy Lee Jones is using and everything else, that he has some military background, because he just seems to be too cool and everybody's deferring to him, even Gary Busey. So we'll get to where that takes us later.
Folksaw. Jess has told us how to say it. There you go.
Forecastle is Folksall. Interesting. Okay. Let's see. So then Nash calls up to the comm or whatever, and he says, "Did we hear gunfire?" And Gary Busey's like, "No, those are party poppers. We're sending somebody to relieve you." And then Nash gets killed. They send 2 guys down there to kill Nash, and they open up the freezer to try to take out Ryback, because.
And here's the first really great Steven Seagal moment.
Yes.
He's hiding in the ceiling.
Yeah, it's like he's hiding in the ceiling. Somehow the air duct supports his weight, and he's up there in the ceiling. And the 2 guys come in and blow the room away with bullets, and then he drops down and kills them both. He knocks them down and gets out of the freezer. He locks it behind him. He locks them in the freezer, and then he starts getting a couple things. He grabs a knife, and then they blow away the lock from inside the deal and come out. And he's turned off the lights. He takes his little throwing knife and throws it straight into one guard's neck, killing him instantly. And then he grabs the other guard, or the other terrorist, I should say, and then like chokes him out to death. And then it's like, "Now I've got a machine gun," you know. He doesn't say that, but basically from this point onward, it's Die Hard on a boat.
It is, yes.
Essentially what it is. So while he's in there down in the galley, he cooks up this bomb. He takes some steel wool and some alcohol or cooking oil or something. He puts it all in there into a cup, and then he puts it in a microwave and sets the timer. Now this will come up later. Far too perfectly will it come up later, but we'll get there.
It worked out really well the way they did it. Because when he shut off the lights, I didn't pay attention to how he shut off all the goddamn lights and had the safety lights come on. And they do bring it up.
Oh, so okay, because I was like,
it was actually really clever.
Oh, I didn't realize that's okay. Now you know what? That makes more sense now.
What he did was he hit the breaker.
Yes, not the lights. That's right, the breaker. And so when he turned it on, the microwave turned on, and that's okay. All right, we'll get there in a minute. Yeah. So then we have the scene where the military, which is kind of weird, the military sends an F-18 to look for the chopper. And I'm like, look for the chopper why, how. I never really quite understood that. It's like if a chopper's missing, why would you think it's at that ship and send a plane straight for the ship?
This is part that really, really doesn't make much sense because they partially play it off like this was a planned actual entertainment venue.
Yeah.
And partially that it was a terrorist event.
Yes.
They can't seem to make up their mind on that point because they have the Playmate on there.
Yes.
Which, unless the terrorists were just like, we really need a Playmate with us on this. The whole thing makes it sound like and not to mention they stole a fucking helicopter.
Right.
But yeah, they send the F-18 to find it.
Yeah, it's really weird. So the F-18 shows up and then, sorry?
They don't know what it is, but they know it's on this ship.
Yeah, and that was the part that didn't make any sense. I was like, okay, so either our terrorists hijacked a real entertainment thing that was coming. They sort of like replaced them, and like the Playmate showed up already booked and everything, and she didn't know the difference. And then the helicopter shows up. Well, then that would be part of an established plan that was all set up. If the terrorists,
in which case they would expect the helicopter to wait there to take them back.
Right. So the only reason this makes any sense is if the band and the caterers and the Playmate and the chopper were all fake to begin with. The chopper was a stolen thing. The Playmate somehow got bamboozled into coming to this thing where a bunch of terrorists have set up a fake party. This is why if Erika Eleniak had been a villain, it would have made a hell of a lot more sense.
Yes.
But
Faith
anyway, yeah.
is abdication of reason asked, did the terrorists supplant the real entertainers? They don't tell us.
They don't tell us whether or not they did or not. They never
because
do.
They again with the band comes out and they play and they sing and Tommy's wailing on the harmonica and it seems like they were actually there for that. And then suddenly they weren't. Yeah,
there's no point. Like if they were going to tell us that, they would have told us that when we got to the big war room thing. It's like they found a band and some caterers like tied up or killed or something in a locker somewhere. They never do that. So it doesn't make any sense. Anyway, this F-18 shows up to look for the chopper, and that's when the terrorists let loose the giant phalanx Gatling gun to blow it out of the sky with the relatively bad special effect the monkey mentioned earlier.
Those things are so cool if you ever get to see one fired in real life. Oh.
Now here's another like what the fuck moment. So now Ryback has escaped the freezer. He's killed 2 guards. He's gotten a bunch of equipment. And then from the galley, now I don't know the layout of battleships, so maybe this is a lot easier than it looked. But from the galley, he made it to the captain's quarters to find the captain's body and lay his uniform over him without being caught, without encountering any other terrorists. I mean, throughout the film, we see like an army of terrorists setting up construction stuff and just all these guys with guns and there's a submarine coming. There's all these guys, and yet at every point where Ryback has to go from point A to point B in the ship, which is it's tight confined quarters to make the maximum use of the space, he somehow gets from point A to point B without running into anybody. So like, what the fuck?
I've never been on a ship that small. A ship is not as confined as like a submarine is.
Sure.
There's a great scene in there where he's like underneath one of the walkways and he can see everything above him going on. I've actually been in a position like that in the engine room of my dad's ship. So there are places where you can do that, but half the time he's walking out in the open because there's a scene I think it's right after that, after he takes the time to cover the captain, which all right, I get it, respect. But you're on a ship filled with fucking terrorists. But there's a scene right after that where he's like, they show him, doing moving the gun around, waving it, looking around, but he's walking across a giant, vast, open space.
Yeah.
A well-lit, vast, open space.
Well, yeah, that bugged the hell. But there's one thing I forgot to mention. The note in this movie that really struck the memory with me was after they've blown the plane out of the sky, and then we cut to a really bad day for night shot overhead of the ship going through the water, and then Jimi Hendrix starts playing. That whole thing, for whatever reason, was burned in my memory because as soon as that happened, I was like, aha, I remember this. This is a feel-good moment. This is where I thought this movie had a lot more, because Jimi Hendrix kind of brings credibility to just about anything.
Yeah. There's so many parts of this movie. If you guys do watch this movie, and I actually would recommend watching it, it's not a horrible movie. You definitely have to suspend disbelief.
Yes. definitely.
And not just for the normal Steven Seagal killing people things. The way he gets around this ship is just fucking amazing. I rate Prostate Ass what Hendrix song? It's when he's playing the national anthem.
No, it wasn't the national anthem. It was fuck.
Oh no, that's right. Tommy does that. Tommy just
sings it.
Rips.
Yeah, he riffs it. I forget which Jimmy is. It's bow, 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 whatever that. I don't know the name. It's that one. So now that the F-18's been blown out of the sky, now the military knows something's wrong, even though a missing helicopter should have been something to begin with if they knew they were going out of the ship. Anyway, we cut to...
And here starts the biggest hole in the whole fucking movie.
Oh, this is the biggest hole for you? Okay, well, okay. So if this is... Here's my major plot hole. And you tell me if this is your major plot hole, okay?
Okay.
So, so just as preamble, we cut to the war room. And this is, I swear to God, they remade the Doctor Strange war room in miniature for this thing, because it's the same setup, the circle table, the big light above, all the generals and stuff around. Well, there's a little bit of preamble before we get to the plot hole. So let me set it up and you tell me if I got you on the same page.
Go ahead.
Okay. So we go to the war room and Tommy Lee Jones calls in and starts making threats. And now what we found out from this is that, from this conversation that Tommy Lee Jones has with this CIA agent guy, I guess, who's also there, is that Tommy Lee Jones was a super duper covert black ops agent for the government. The CIA decided to close down something called Operation Cleopatra. And part of shutting that down entailed killing Tommy Lee Jones's character and assassinating him. But Tommy Lee Jones didn't die, and this is in part his revenge. And his revenge is going to hijack this ship, commandeer all of the nuclear-tipped Tomahawk missiles, and sell them onto the international terror market or whatever. And he's going to do this because they talk about this in this scene is like Exposition City. Mm-hmm. How one of the missions that Tommy Lee Jones's character on, his name is Bill Stranix. Stranix. So one of the missions he was on was to scuttle a North Korean submarine. And then somebody asked, "Do you know for a fact he actually blew up that submarine?" And the guy just kind of sits there quiet. Anyway,
no, he says we know he did it.
Oh, we know he did, yeah. But of course, and then we cut to, of course, the submarine in action.
You skipped over.
Yeah, go ahead.
One really important thing. The way we start the scene in the war room is him walking in, and there's a girl whispering in his ear, "You're going to have to explain this one. He was one of yours."
They already know who's they already know who's taking over the ship. Yeah.
Yep. And then there's the part where he never suggests during his conversation with them. He never suggests he's going to sell the nukes.
This is true.
The implication there is that he's gone crazy and he's going to use them.
Yeah, and he even tries to play that up and trying to say a bunch of stuff about the environment and a bunch of crazy hippie stuff, which is sort of, there's some indication that he was a Vietnam vet, that he might have gone wacko, smacko, or whatever. So, okay, so the plot hole that you're talking about is how the lady knew who had taken over the ship before they actually got to the point of knowing.
The plot hole is all around that, though, because through this whole movie, and it goes all the way up to the end, this little fucker is in on it. Because he has, it's his guy. We know he blew up the nukes. And then there's one tiny part almost at the very end where the guy sitting next to him actually leans over and whispers, "We'll just blame it all on the chief."
Yeah, on Ryback, yeah. I hadn't thought about it in those terms before. I thought it was just, I thought it was more like, since this guy was not killed and the CIA basically is to blame for this guy having his opportunity, they're looking more to cover their asses on, they failed and let this guy get away rather than being in on it.
It's very much the same as how the band is just not only great at playing instruments, but deadly with a submachine gun.
Okay.
He comes off through the whole thing as part of it. And they just left it hanging there. In fact, at the end, sorry to jump ahead, but at the end, this guy just gets up and leaves the room and nobody fucking notices.
Yeah.
Like, well, he's gone.
Well, that was not the plot hole that I had written down. So when we get there in the movie, I'll bring it up. So let's see. We go to the war room. We learn about Bill Stranix and what his possible motivation is. And then to show their bona fides, so to speak, Tommy Lee Jones and the guys on the ship fire a harpoon missile at, I believe it was like a monitoring station off of Hawaii to try to disrupt their ability to monitor what they're doing. And so we see some Gulf War footage of smart bombs going into a building as some stock footage to show that this had happened. And only then, only after that, did they say, call the president or wake the president. I'm like, the president would have been woken up about 3 hours ago.
Somebody stole one of our fucking battleships. Might be a good time to call it.
They took my battleship. Now, this is the point at which we have a big montage of all the activity on the ship and everything. We see all the terrorists marching around and doing construction stuff and sort of welding all these I-beams around the ship, these big yellow I-beams. And as I'm watching this, I'm thinking, okay, Die Hard, which this is basically a takeoff of. The plan in Die Hard was you had about, what, six villains, 6 bad guys, 6 or 7?
Maybe a dozen.
Was it really 12 guys? I thought it was like Hans Gruber and like 6 of his guys or something.
God, you make me. I would say it's probably a dozen. Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, so it was a relatively small number of people. At least enough people. Yeah, people that could do the job, but not so many people that you're going to have a lot of loose ends. There is a fucking army of bad guys that were far more people than the caterers on this ship when they're doing all this stuff. There's guys welding. There's people all over the place. I'm thinking, okay, there is not enough money for this plan to pay off to go around here. You can't have this many conspirators and make it work. It just, my logical brain was going absolutely south on this one.
Because you also have all the people on the sub.
Well, yeah, and we'll get to the sub in a minute. Holy shit! And there's a super quick, crazy cameo that I noticed with the sub crew that I bet you didn't see. But anyway, we'll get there in a minute. So then we have some more day for night footage of the ship. We almost never see actual like night footage of the ship itself moving. It's all like just filtered blue footage. Mm-hmm. And then so Ryback is moving through the now deserted party area, or the big cafeteria or whatever, where they had the concert. And there's the dead officers they killed around there. And so he goes up to this other room, and sitting in front of this room is this giant cake. And he kicks it aside and lets it roll across the floor so he can make room for it. And then as the cake stops, out pops Erika Eleniak in all of her glory.
Oh, it was a beautiful moment.
Oh, Erika Eleniak in a thong and just a navy jacket. Super duper thin French cut. Yeah.
Yeah, French cut thong and her titties hanging out.
It was, and I, as a kid, that was just majestic.
This is among the dumber parts of the movie. It really is, and we'll get into it in a minute. But it is such a beautiful moment. I'm so glad they included it.
Yes.
It would probably trigger the bitch at CNN, but I enjoyed it.
And so she comes out and the music's playing and she's dancing and everything. And Ryback's like, and she's got her eyes closed the whole time and she's kind of moving around. And then Ryback's like, shut off the music. And she's like, oh, she's like, sort of taken aback. And then they cut to like Steven Seagal reaching his hand out. And then they cut because he's like reaching towards the camera, like he's reaching out at her. And then they cut to him taking her into a room. And then she's like crying. And she talks about how, she's July 89 and she did a Hunter episode. Yeah, go ahead.
We have to go back a moment because there's been all this death and destruction. Mm-hmm. When we last saw the cake, it was in this room. When we last saw her, she was taking pills that knocked her out. Mm-hmm. So she wakes up from being knocked out, goes out into this room where there are visible dead bodies, and puts herself in the cake and just waits for it to be moved.
No. So here's what I think happened. She goes into the dressing room earlier on. She takes the pills. She gets herself done up. She gets into the cake and then falls asleep. And then the guys bring her out in preparation for her to pop out of the cake at the time that the shooting starts, and she's still unconscious. And then by the time Ryback, pushes the thing along and nudges it, it bumps against the wall. That's when she wakes up and suddenly goes, "Oh, it's my turn," and then she jumps up. That's how I think it proceeded.
I'm going to take your take on it because that makes far more sense than what I saw.
Yeah, I think she was unconscious after she got into the cake and before they started shooting. That's the only thing that makes sense. I'm willing to extend the benefit of the doubt to that chain of events.
You're nicer than me on this one.
I
The Jack Cochran asks, no one ate the cake to celebrate. Nobody had time. It was a fake cake that somebody jumps out of anyway.
Yeah, it was a done up, and of course they couldn't have her jump out until the captain showed up anyway because it was for him. So, and the
which
captain
makes
never
no
showed.
sense because it wasn't for him anyway.
Well, it was supposed to be his birthday. I don't know. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Anyway, so then yeah, Ryback takes her.
Died
into a
before
room.
he got to see those nice titties. That's
I
so
know, but everybody else did. I bet he saw the movie afterwards. It's okay.
I bet so.
So Ryback takes her aside. She's crying. She's like, I was in a Hunter episode. And I'm like, oh God, that is so dated. No one will know what she's talking about if they watch this movie today. Hunter. And so she's crying.
There's a really shitty line from her here. It's one of your favorite things. You have to earn the moment.
Yeah.
She looks at Seagal and says something to the effect of, I've done shitty things in my life before, but you can't judge me for it. I'm like, the fuck are you talking about, cunt?
Yeah.
like just woke up with a steel pushing you around in a room full of fucking dead bodies, and that's where you go.
That's the thing you're worried about. Besides, which is like, what are you apologizing? First off, you're a professional playmate model. You pose naked for money. You were doing this as a job. Why is this horrible?
Yeah. She was just like, broken down.
This doesn't make any sense. But
she acts like she's Robert Downey Jr. in Less Than Zero. I mean,
oh Jesus.
She's a playmate, and she showed her titties, and suddenly she's just all broken up about it.
Yeah, they have this weird conversation where it's completely out of place with the events going on around them. And she's like, well, are you like a Navy SEAL or something? I think she says, or Special Forces or whatever.
Special Forces, yeah.
And he says, no, I'm just a cook.
I'm just a cook.
A cook? And she's like, oh, we're gonna die.
We're gonna die.
And then we cut to the whole thing with the sub. We see the sub, this North Korean sub, and inside it's being driven by Germans. The captain of the sub is a German. We hear his accent, and he's German. Now, it's not the entire sub is crewed by Germans. No. It's an international effort. We'll find out shortly. But the captain is German. And then Seagal, then we cut back to Seagal and her, and he gives her a gun. He's like trying to lock her in a cabinet and say, stay in here.
Not just a gun, an M5.
Yeah, so he tries to put her into a locker to say, stay in here, you'll be safe. And she keeps banging on the lock. She says, no, help me. And he opens the door. He's like, do you understand what will happen if they hear you? And he says, I don't want to be alone. Like, okay. So then he hands her a gun and sort of gives her the most bare bones, this is how a gun works thing. Now remember, this is a Playboy playmate who is so scared of what people think of her for coming out of a cake. Now she's being handed an MP5.
Yeah. Instead of handing her 45, a regular standard issue, which we see him wearing.
Mm-hmm.
We see him with one on his hip. No, he gives her a fucking M5. Oh, for fuck's sake. And explains to her the difference between automatic and semi-automatic.
Oh, yeah, he takes the time. It's like, the world's coming to an end. What the fuck are you doing?
Doesn't tell her where the switch is. Just make sure you have it on semi-automatic. Now, if you're handing somebody who doesn't know how to shoot a gun because there's terrorists, you probably want them on automatic.
Probably, except you don't want somebody who doesn't know how to fucking use a gun on automatic. Because it'll pull and they'll end up shooting you in the head. Anyway, so around this time, they figure out the two guys they sent after Ryback haven't reported in. So Tommy Lee Jones and Gary Busey and a couple of guys, they all go down to the galley. And that's when Tommy Lee Jones sees the two dead guys. And he sees the guy with the knife in his neck and he says, a professional did this. No, this wasn't an amateur job or anything. And when they turn the power on, that's when the improvised bomb goes off. It doesn't hurt. I don't think it kills anybody. I think it just kind of goes off.
No, it kills a couple of the crew.
Okay.
It kills a couple of the bad guys that were with them.
That's right. And Tommy Lee Jones knows what's going on as soon as the microwave
Put these fires out.
Yeah, put these fires out.
Somebody put these fires out. Yeah.
Now here's where we come up on my plot hole.
Okay.
So we cut back to the big planning room, the big government operations room, where all the generals are like freaking out over this. And they say, SEAL Team 5 is on the way. Okay, now the ship is out at sea. SEAL Team 5's on the way. they already know that they have an F-18 that has been taken down by this ship. The only way to get SEAL Team 5 out there, purportedly, is by aircraft, which we find out later. All right. Why? It's a suicide mission. Why would they do this? And they start planning for this before they know that Ryback is loose on the ship. Okay. So they've already decided they're going to send SEAL Team 5 by aircraft out to a ship at sea in order to retake it. Why?
Yeah, that is definitely one of the whole thing about how they're going to end this siege makes no goddamn sense. One, the SEAL Team 5 thing is people have called this Die Hard. You mentioned it earlier. It is the moment in Die Hard where the police are running up on the building and they get shot.
Yeah.
SEAL Team 5, if they were going to do this, would have either waited until it was dark and come in by boat. They'd land in. Yeah, see, SEALs drop in the water and use a scorpion.
Right.
It was just a setup to show an explosion. It really was, and to heighten tension.
Yeah, I mean, later on, they almost have a plan, except they're relying on one guy to take down the defensive systems of the ship before SEAL Team 5 gets there. But
which is another fucking major plot hole, because but let's go ahead and jump into this. Steven Seagal eventually, let me know if I'm missing anything major between here and there. As he's running around the ship, he eventually stumbles upon his crew locked in a room and cuts them out with the
acetylene torch right there.
That just happened to be there.
Just happened to be there. Yeah, I make that note here too.
Happened to be there.
Yeah.
Gets them out, and they manage to completely disable the ship's weapons.
All of them, the phalanx, everything.
By cutting a couple of wires.
By cutting a couple of wires. Well, let me back up real quick. This is also the point at which we find out Ryback's real background, where he is this super duper decorated monster soldier who at one point punched his commanding officer during Panama, and that's why he was busted down to anything. He could only be like a yeoman or a cook, and so he chose a cook, and his captain still respected him even though he did a bad thing and kept him on as his personal cook. So Ryback is like the super professional. Krill, this XO, had no idea what this guy's background was.
No.
Even though as soon as one of the top brass guys hears his name over in the control room, the Dr. Strangelove room, he knows exactly who he is.
Yeah.
Oh, he's got this reputation. Why? Anyway, and then Tommy Lee Jones is like, why didn't you know who this guy was? He's like, oh, well, it was in the captain's personal file. I didn't have access to it till now. So as Ryback and the girl are running around, she says this line, "I'm the girl. Why do I have to carry everything?" I was like, oh, that's so cute. And she also at this time, she took the time to fashionably pull a little lock of her hair out the front of her ball cap she's got on backwards. That cute? That was so cute. I was like, oh, she's trying to look good while running away from terrorists and carrying around.
I also love how the Navy outfit that he just happened to throw to her, the overalls and everything, just fit her so well.
Yeah, tiny little woman in a ship.
So well.
Yeah, especially on the chest area.
Accentuated her hips and everything. And she doesn't have very big hips, so that's nice.
She's so see, Seagal goes and commandeers a big emergency satellite phone. And then another weird line. So Seagal has no idea what's going on yet. Okay, he hasn't seen the main bad guy. He doesn't know what's the plan is, or what their motivations are, or who they are, where they are. But he calls up the Dr. Strangelove room, and he says this line, "This man may be crazy." And I'm like, who?
Well, wait. Here, because you're missing another major plot hole with this movie. It's almost the way they throw it in at the end is almost like at the end of Tango and Cash. Here's this guy you've never seen before, but he's gonna kick your ass. Right. At the end of the movie, when Tommy Lee and him hook up, they know each other.
Oh no, I have that note. Yeah, I'm that noted too. I'm all over that.
No, wait. Yeah. At this time with the phone, he has already seen Tommy Lee Jones, because when he's on that conversation, he's talking about all of the structure, or the construction going on where they're building a way to move the missiles off the
Did
ship.
he see Tommy Lee Jones?
Yes, because that's when he was underneath the walkway.
Oh, okay.
And he looks right up. He sees both Gary Busey and Tommy Lee Jones.
Okay, all right.
Never thinks to go, oh, by the way, this is them. And they don't tell him, but that would be some important information. Hey, by the way, this crazy jackass I've ran into before is on the ship.
Yeah, it's like they know. Yeah, that's true. Okay, I had forgotten the part where he was under there and saw them. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Of course, I'm still trying to figure out how he would say this man may be crazy. Like, what did he overhear something that would tell him that? I don't know. I don't know.
At that point, I mean, if he knows who he is, yeah, that he might be crazy would make sense. But
he never mentions.
Yeah.
So let's see.
I'm going to be muted for 1 second. I'm still listening.
Okay. So anyway, the army of worker bees around the ship are getting this big railway system ready, essentially, with these I-beams across the ship to offload the nuclear-tipped Tomahawk missiles. Now, who are they going to sell the missiles to? Well, we'll get to that shortly because Tommy Lee Jones has a interaction with some people. But so Ryback decides that the smart thing to do here, for whatever reason, is to blow up the helicopter that the band came in. So he sneaks out on deck, and he basically sets up a little bomb, basically, inside of the helicopter. The bad guys see him. Jesus Christ. Well, the Playmate is hiding underneath one of the I think, escape ships or whatever, little dinghies. And so they blow up this helicopter as Steven Seagal is, I think he rappels down.
Well,
so hold on, but real quick. So the helicopter blows up as Steven Seagal's jumping over the ship and rappelling down on some rope that just happened to be there. And as he's rappelling down, and they show him hanging from the ship, there's a fire hose active on the fire that immediately disappears in the next cut. There is a stream of water coming from a fire hose to put out the fire right after it explodes, and then it's gone. I'm like, okay, I hate continuity issues like that.
Well, here's because we have to explain the rest of this scene for me to get to my criticism here.
Sure.
She gets caught underneath where she's hiding. And there's 4 guys there, and Steven Seagal comes up, kills them all.
I know. In 2 seconds. In 2 seconds, he kills them all. It was just so.
And then he goes behind a bulkhead, shuts the door, locks it, sticks a grenade there with the pin pulled, but the part of it's still on, so that it'll explode when the door's opened.
Right.
Now, if you go back to the helicopter, okay?
Yes.
He caused that explosion. He had poured some liquid on there, and he sets a grenade.
Yeah.
Sets a grenade, and this grenade has a timer of like 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Because it gives him time to move all around and everything when he's already done all this. As soon as they open that door, that grenade explodes.
Right. Yeah, like it was a tripwire or something. Yeah.
So he apparently has very special grenades. He has the 15-second timer and the instant. And by the way, there's no good time to use an instant grenade.
No. There's never a good time to have an automatic explosive.
Man.
So then after the helicopter blows up, Tommy Lee Jones and the guys, actually it was Gary Busey's idea. They're in the control room. They're like, we know this Ryback guy's running around. Gary Busey's like, hey, there's a sprinkler system where we've got most of the crew held. Let's just turn it on and drown them. That'll make Ryback all busy following that, trying to figure that out while we get this other stuff done. And Tommy Jones is like, you're an evil motherfucker. And I was like, I was sitting there going like, yeah, Gary Busey's an evil motherfucker in this. I was like, that was decent. So they let him know this. This is the part at which they're walking down the hallway, and all of a sudden the Morse code tapping starts.
Yes.
Like it shouldn't have been going on the entire time or anything. Just as they're walking by, the Morse code starts tapping, and it goes to the convenient acetylene torch that's sitting next to the sealed door, and then he unseals them, and inside are Tuco Salamanca and a couple other character actors that you'll recognize if you see them. And then there's one really old guy with a Navy hat on, and this is the guy I think is an actual Navy vet that they put into the movie because he's like the gunnery chief or whatever. But anyway, so they have these guys, and this is his little like strike team, which Steven Seagal will abandon fairly shortly afterwards, and we won't see again for like another quarter of the movie. But the other thing that really, another plot hole, I guess, the suspension of disbelief and everything, is that Ryback knows everything about this ship, about explosives, about gunnery, about everything. And I'm like, he knows like what switches to hit, what wires to cut, how to operate, all of the gunnery stuff. I mean,
now weapons and munitions, I would give him that, and not some of the ones that they use later, but most of the stuff he does, like improvising, I would have no trouble believing a SEAL would understand. Knowing the inside and outside of the ship, again, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But typically it would be more on an individual learned basis. You know, you'd go on a mission and you would study the mission layout.
Right.
But he's been on the ship apparently for a few years. So I can forgive some of that. It's when they get to how they deal with the sub that I'm like, you're out of your fucking mind.
But anyway, we'll get there. So then Ryback has to explain to his new little team about what his plan is. You know, they got the guys drowning, but they're also trying to get the missiles off. So we got to do all this stuff. And SEAL Team 5 is coming in because the other guys told me, so we have to disable all the weapons on the ship. And one of the guys in this team starts whining, and he says, I just do the laundry, man. I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh,
and then so he's like, you know, it's not. Steven Seagal says, hey man, it's a job. It's not just a job. It's an adventure. And then he's like, they hand him a gun, and he's like, I'm just the laundry guy. Erika Eleniak, the playmate, who has been a playmate all the way for her entire life as far as this movie's concerned, up until about 10 minutes ago. She grabs the gun and shows him how to load it.
Yeah, no, he actually asks her how to load it.
I know, and I'm like, she hasn't fired a gun once in this entire fucking movie.
And Steven didn't show her how to reload a gun.
No, she just like picks it up and like slaps in a magazine and loads it like a pro. And I'm just like,
yep.
What the fuck just happened? So then
this is still, as far as we know, this is still at the point where she doesn't like guns and doesn't like killing, which she's told us repeatedly.
Yeah, she told us over that I don't kill anybody. Like, I have 2 rules in life: don't kill anybody. And I was just like, okay. So, and then we get into this giant gunfight in a hallway with our new team of guys, and Steven Seagal just kind of like throwing an MP5 over his shoulder while he's not looking and spraying it down a hallway, which is that's how you use, you know, your ammunition effectively.
This is the scene where we have a really great 90s moment.
Yes.
The ammo never runs out of those guns, and he fires them. Fuck out of them. So
in the middle of this gunfight, they call command, or I should say the playmate calls command. And then she's like, who's this? And like, who's this? Put Ryback on.
Real quick. The Jack Cochran, playmates are all gangbangers, true story. Yes, exactly. Anyway, sorry.
So this is where Ryback sort of tells them, like, you know, oh, we got a lot of trouble. Oh, no, that's somebody else's line. He's telling them what they're going to do. He's going to try to turn off the weapons so that SEAL Team 5 can get there and all this other stuff. And I'm like,
wait, we missed the whole part. The reason that they're in this hallway right now is they're saving the sailors.
Oh, right, yes.
We're all in the, how do you say it, foresall? Whatever?
Yeah, foresall. And
they're going to be drowned by them turning on the sprinkler system to fill up an entire front compartment of a ship, because that's really a good idea.
Yeah, it's like, we'll drown them. No, you'll just make them really wet and like climb up the ladder a little bit. And besides which, we stopped trying to save the sailors because they never get saved until the end of the fucking movie.
No, they just turn off the water so they don't drown.
Right, that's all they do. But anyway, so they're trying to turn off the water. They're trying to stop the guys from drowning, which the ship does not have that much water available to do that. And it would be seawater anyway. So
I don't know the logistics of that part, if they could actually purposefully fill an entire front compartment of a ship. I mean, but I just don't think they would be able to do it with the sprinkler system, and certainly not with as much water as pouring out of a sprinkler system, because it's not
a
like
waterfall.
It's a fucking full-on deluge.
Anyway, so they're talking to Ryback. Ryback tells them the plan at the command center. And then one of the guys, and when you see this movie, when you see the characters playing the commanders and the generals and everything around that table, take note, because a lot of the actors in there, they made a living playing those exact kind of parts in every movie you've ever seen them in afterwards. That they're all military guys who play like generals and majors and admirals and things. There's a lot of familiar faces there in character acting wise, but one of the guys there, as they're closing out the call, he says this line, and I quote, and we'll talk about the British art of understatement. "We got a lot of trouble on that ship." And I'm like, well, I don't know, nuclear thieving terrorists and gunfights over the radio as you're talking to these guys and drowning. Oh my God, it was just so, it was so out of place. And then we have the 90s awesome Steven Seagal moment where he runs down a hallway with 2 MP5s crossed one over the other on his arms, firing as he runs down the hallway into like doorways and shit.
And with perfect aim.
And with perfect
when he's not
aim.
even looking.
Oh my God.
Look, SEALs are badass. I will not take anything away from these guys. The ones that I've met, I wouldn't even fuck with them.
Yeah.
They cannot fire perfect aim in both directions without looking.
Right.
It just doesn't happen. It's retarded.
So it's at this point that they've turned off the water that Steven Seagal and playmate Erika Eleniak kind of leave their team behind. They just go off on their own again. And
yeah, she runs behind him because behind you is the safest place to be on this ship.
Oh God. And I'm like, I'd rather be behind you, Erika Eleniak. Well, anyway, so they run up to this spot on this sort of catwalk thing, and there's a couple of guards there, and one of the I-beams, this acetylene torch cut I-beam, is hanging by a rope in the middle of this stairwell, basically. And Steven Seagal sneaks up, grabs the rope it's attached to on the railing, pulls it loose, and the thing falls down and completely impales one of the bad guys at the bottom.
Yeah, and this is not tied with any kind of really secure knot. No. All he had to do was pull, and the whole thing opens.
And it goes straight down. It slams straight through this guy and pushes him through the grating. And Miss July 89 says nothing. Who was like, I don't kill people. She just saw a guy get impaled with a giant piece of steel. The guy that she's hoping to save him just did this thing. She says nothing, does nothing. I was just like, okay, all right.
Not even a little eep. Nothing. Yeah. She's cool with it at this point.
So,
you got to give it up to her. She acclimates to violence very well.
I know, which is why she should have been a villain.
Indeed, yeah.
or turned out to be a surprise villain. Like if
I-beam of impaling +5 is standard issue on all American ships.
Yeah, no shit. I had kind of hoped as I was watching this movie, even though I know it wasn't going to happen, I'd kind of hoped that at the last moment it would have been revealed that she was Tommy Lee's girl and she turns on him.
Oh, that would have been awesome.
That would have been great. But
real quick, Irate Prostate, I want to ask you something. You were in the Navy, right? And if I'm remembering correctly, you were. Did you have problems watching this movie as a sailor? I'm going to wait for his answer, so go ahead.
All right, so then Erika Eleniak and Steven Seagal come up on a bunch of guys who are basically like a big machine shop, cutting the I-beams and doing a bunch of other stuff. And he has a giant knife fight with them. And
yeah, none of those guys got guns.
No, somehow these guys don't have guns, and they're in their overalls, and they're just technicians and everything, and they're part of this conspiracy just because. And so Steven Seagal gets out his little knife and does the backhanded moves and all the stabbing and everything, and even lays a guy down onto a bandsaw and cuts into his shoulder.
Yes.
I was like, holy shit. And then they cut away from it. I'm like, well, did he finish it? I mean, what did he do?
Well, cutting somebody right there would hit several major. Yeah, he'd be dead. And they don't have guns, so you don't have to worry about them once he. There's some actually funny kills in here because he gets the one guy by going through his thigh.
Yes.
I don't know what it is with Steven Seagal and knives, but this was one of this is one of the set pieces just for him for what he does.
And then we cut to Stranix, Tommy Lee Jones, talking on a satellite phone to apparently the buyer of these missiles. And
yes.
he's still negotiating the sale of these missiles as he's in the middle of stealing them, which I was just, okay. And the buyer is Francois. And I'm like, okay, so the French are buying nuclear missiles from an ex-CIA, stolen nuclear missiles that they're somehow going to get onto a North Korean sub driven by a German captain. And Tommy Lee Jones says, Francois, if you don't like it, I'll call Mohammed. And I'm like, oh, yes. I'm like, oh, fuck me. So I was like, so I'm sitting there going like, so what was your plan if he said no?
Real quick, Irate said he wasn't in the Navy. Jim Healis was.
Oh,
And he says he has trouble watching movies like this. As I watched this, the only thing I kept thinking is this movie would piss my dad off.
Oh,
It
yeah.
would annoy the shit out of him. Anyway, sorry.
So it's at this point that the guys actually end up able to shut down the security systems. This is Ryback's little team was able to shut down the weapon systems on the ship. And they know this, and they had a reading that there was something coming in from outside, and they figured it was probably a SEAL team or a response team or something else, which is SEAL Team 5 in a giant helicopter again. The same model, I think, as the band flew in on. They're probably just recycling stock footage because why pay for something new? So the phalanx guns are down. They're all disabled. So then guys standing on top of the submarine with bazookas shoot SEAL Team 5 out of the sky. I was like,
yeah.
Okay, so either way, they were on a suicide mission because they had planned to do this before they knew Ryback was on the ship or had any notion that the weapon systems would be disabled, but they still had those guys in the air regardless at that point. This was the biggest plot hole to me. I was like, you're sending them on a suicide mission. What you do is you drop them off 2 miles outbound onto the little dinghies or Zodiacs or something, and then they sneak onto the ship. You don't. It made no sense, and it was like, why even do this? Oh, to get an explosion. Okay.
You know what would have been fun?
What's that?
There was, I forget the name of the movie, but there was the movie where I think it's a school gets taken over by terrorists.
Oh, you're talking about Toy Soldiers.
Is that the one where they actually let the special forces actually they were involved in the movie, and they said they would do it as long as they let them come up with their own plan for how they would do it, how they would infiltrate. Excuse me, I'm so sorry, guys.
Okay.
And it's a really neat sequence because you get to see their tactical stuff. And if they would have let SEAL Team 5 go, okay, this is how we would do it, and then the people who made the movie had to figure out a way to stop that, yeah. I could do it.
Sure.
But surface to air missiles on a submarine,
yeah,
that's lazy. That's fucking lazy.
Irate Prostate says, was it a bazooka or a stinger? It was bazookas. It was like tubes, not like the missile was sticking out the other side, as far as I could see. So yeah, well, stingers could take out a helicopter. I could be mistaken. I'd have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure they were the props they were holding were like tube-looking bazookas kind of deals. So, and I'm sure they're not actually called bazookas. That's just my layman's civvy language for it. But so it's after this that Ryback and Playmate 89 go back to this machine shop, and he starts taking apart like warheads.
Yes.
Or like I don't think they were like nuclear warheads. I think they were just sort of like artillery shells. And he starts like making custom explosives, and they're sitting there like doing very careful drilling. And I'm like, the world is coming to an end. How do you have the time to do this?
Yeah.
Why are you doing it? So, and he puts one of these shells onto a boiling pot to liquefy the explosive, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he takes all this stuff together and he makes this super duper custom satchel bomb. One that's also totally waterproof and technically perfect, of course, because it's got to operate in a moment.
Well, he put it in a Ziploc bag.
Now Ziploc makes some good products. So then he scales the anchor chain down into the water. And he swims out to the sub, which has been pulled up nearby to the battleship. And he gets spotted as he plants this bomb on the side of the sub.
Miles O'Brien spots him.
And Miles O'Brien spots him.
There's somebody in the water.
There's somebody in the water, and they start shooting.
This is another problem I had with the movie, real quick. As he's running around the deck, he has all of this free time, and he can move anywhere he wants to. But they have all of these lights.
Yes.
The first thing he should have done, shoot the lights.
Yeah.
Which he never does, and it causes him more problems because the reason he gets seen is a sweeping light happens to go across him.
Yeah.
And Miles just happened to be looking at that spot at the right time.
Yeah. And also notice that even when they disabled all the electricals and everything for the defense systems, they didn't disable the lights somehow.
No. They just got the weapon system.
So part of as they see him, they start shooting at the water, and then a couple of guys on the sub start throwing these hook chain things, these sort of like grappling hook deals at him and try to sweep him. And they do. One of them actually cuts open the back of his little scuba outfit.
The back of his back.
The back of his back. And you would think, holy shit, that should have filleted him open. But you just see him. Well, it did, but you just see some scratches on his back, and they never disable him throughout the entire thing.
When he comes out of the water, he looks like he's been. It looks like meat hanging off his back, right across his spine.
Yeah, just for and so somehow he's still able to move. He's not completely in shock. The saltwater pain against that wound hasn't somehow driven him nuts at this point, so he can climb back on the ship.
You have to remember that at this point, this is his give up moment. He's ready to let Miles kill him. Yeah, and then from behind Miles O'Brien, who's about to shoot Ryback. Titty squirts.
Yeah, titty squirts. Yes, the Playmate saves the day by killing her first person, firing her first gun, and saving Ryback.
Yes, and she fires several shots too. Did you notice that?
Yes, it was about 2 or 3, I think.
Yeah, she with great aim.
So, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna, with great aim, her first shot, her first kill, but she's got to say
she's not shaking, she's not scared, she's nothing.
No.
She just,
Miles drops and she's standing there like the baddest motherfucker on the planet.
Yeah, and with all the guys on the deck chasing around after Ryback, Miles O'Brien's the only one who comes after Ryback or notices that Playmate of the Year is sitting there.
And remember, Steven Seagal just got caught because there was a little bit of light in the water.
Yes.
There's a giant spotlight behind her.
Yes.
As she's standing there with that gun.
So the bomb had gone off on the submarine, and it had damaged the bow plane, I believe it was.
Yep.
So they're examining the damage, and Krill is there. And for a brief moment, we cut to the crew talking. Now, first off, the guy trying to repair the thing down on the bow plane is Italian. He starts talking in Italian. I'm like, okay, so the captain's German, the repair guy's Italian, the buyer of the missiles are French or Middle Eastern, I suppose. I'm like, this is an international effort. How are you going to pay all these guys off? It's just like, it doesn't make any sense. Anyway, but for a brief second.
Well, it was the 90s, so they'd pay him in rubles.
Oh, God. For a brief moment, the camera is on the sub crew, or at least a couple of guys on the top of the ship. And one of them, and it's only for like 3 seconds, is the guy who played Murdoch from MacGyver.
Oh.
And I was like, holy shit, it's Murdoch. And then it cut away and we never see him again. I was like, oh my God, it's Murdoch. And I was so happy to see that. I was so happy to catch that. So Krill is going to, because somehow he magically knows how to fix a bow plane on a submarine, I guess.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I don't know if you paid attention to the steel bar on the bow plane that they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is like a 2-inch bar that you can see. It's probably closer to 4 that's looking at, from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And Tommy Lee Jones said, oh, great, we're dead in the water. We can't do anything because the bow plane helps the sub go up and down, guys.
Mm-hmm.
What Gary Busey says, all you have to do is hammer that back into place or hammer that straight. It does not work that way.
You see, now I could imagine Gary Busey saying something like that, but not the character that he is supposedly playing.
Yeah, or anybody listening to him.
Yeah, or anybody listening to him.
Do you know how hard you have to hit? When I worked at a machine shop, the biggest metal we worked with was a 2 1/4-inch round steel bar. You cannot beat that with a fucking hammer and bend it.
Right. That is not a manual process. That is a dry dock. That's a whole other operation.
That's a replacement.
Yeah. So then we cut to somehow Playmate and Ryback get to a quiet private room where she can bandage him up because she's also a nurse now.
Yes,
just
yes.
Just because she probably did candy striping when she was in high school or something, I bet. Okay, so and then all of a sudden the rest of their little strike team, laundry guy and Tuco Salamanca and everything, and retiree guy show up out of nowhere because they just had to appear then, I guess. And then they see that the submarine, the battleship has left the submarine behind. It's like floating out there by itself at this stage of the game as they do the repairs.
We need to back up a second because there's another major plot hole here. Do you remember when he pulls the string and the giant I-beam goes cutting through somebody?
Yes.
The reason they were doing the structural work there was to build a crane to move these missiles
onto the sub.
Now, if you remember at the very beginning when they first
Mm-hmm.
take over, they're talking about how efficient they have to be.
Yeah.
They have to be efficient and quick.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you can still get your crane working while there's a giant chunk of it in one of your people, you weren't very efficient. Because that was a piece you didn't need. But somehow they managed to get all of the bombs, all of the missiles onto the sub.
Well, I mean, they could have pulled it out of them and used it anyway. I mean, they're merciless terrorists.
There wasn't time.
But time doesn't matter here. We can spend hours in a machine shop taking apart, artillery shells, and we still have enough time to make a backpack bomb to put onto the sub, and we're still at night. It's fine.
Melting explosives with steam.
Melting explosives with steam. Yeah, But anyway, so the submarine is now away from the battleship, and it is lit up like a fucking Christmas tree. It has all of its con lights on.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not talking about some kind of stealth operation at this point. It's just sitting out there. And so somehow our little team of a strike team of Ryback and his retirees, they're still free to move around the ship enough to get down to the deck gun operations center to use the deck guns to fire on the submarine.
Yes.
So somehow they're able to get from the deck over to where where they load and prep the guns, and also are able to fire the guns at the ship. And first they say they don't have any real shells. We left them back at Pearl Harbor or something for the decommissioning. We only have starburst shells.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay. So starburst shells won't blow up anything. They're basically just fireworks. Well, they fire a starburst shell at I guess just as a test or something, or to light up the area as they shoot at a lit up submarine. And then all of a sudden they load a shell that does explode. Now, is this the one that he was prepping in?
No. Well, you missed something in there.
Okay.
They do explain this. They don't have the really good weapons, but they do still have artillery shells.
Okay.
So basically a giant bullet kind of thing rather than your, and yes, for those of you watching, I'm being very vague. But basically they still have a regular bullet they can fire. And that's when he calls on the old guy who we didn't see until, that he runs into his crew, and for some reason there's an old man running around with them.
Yeah.
What do you think, Chief? Can we fire that? And so they get down there, and not only do they have time to fire it, they have time to fire it twice.
Yes.
And Tommy Lee Jones does nothing about it. He just fucking lets it happen.
Well, he runs out on the deck after the first shot goes off with the starburst. Okay. And then he's out on the deck as they're getting ready to fire off the second thing. And this is one of the scenes I remember from the movie, because when the second shot goes off, the shockwave of it blasts Tommy Lee Jones back and should just basically shatter his eardrums, making him deaf for the rest of the day, if not the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Somehow he just kind of gets up and runs back into the command center after that.
Well, that's the thing. That's with the second shot. And why wouldn't you go down to where they were?
You know where they have to be. I mean, for fuck's sake. But no, they let them go.
It's not like they're going to be at the back gun. They're at the fucking one they just fired.
So Tommy Lee Jones goes back into the control room, and he's all nuts now, and he's going kooky dookie, and he's going to say, okay, we're going to fire some missiles now because the sub's gone. We have no out. We're just going to say fuck it. And so he fires. He fires two Tomahawk. What?
Back up 1 second.
Okay.
So they fire at the submarine.
Yes.
It hits the submarine, which explodes completely.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Like they hit the self-destruct button.
Yeah. And so Gary Busey's dead. Everybody, the German captain, the Italian, they're all gone.
It just goes blue and gray.
Well, it is a North Korean sub.
You know what?
It might have been made out of gasoline.
Again, that's not how ships go down, but it was a great explosion. I'll give them that.
I mean, if the artillery shell had been some kind of like a mini nuke, then maybe. But so Tommy Lee Jones says fuck it, and he aims 2 Tomahawk nuclear missiles at Honolulu and fires them off, and they go zoom zoom. And then we have another giant gunfight with Ryback and his guys to make it to the command center.
Did you catch the relevance there, though?
Of shooting it at Honolulu.
Shooting 2 nukes at Honolulu, not just one.
Oh, you're right.
Two.
I hadn't thought of
Cute little
that.
play they did there.
I hadn't thought of that. Very good. All right, legit. But we also get in the middle of this gunfight a roadhouse kill.
Yes. Oh my God, I laughed so hard.
Steven Seagal pulls a guy's basically larynx out of his throat and drops him to the floor. And it's just so gross and so quick. I was just like, holy shit. Because to this point, the only really lots of people have been shot in this movie, etc. But the only really sort of like over the top deaths so far were impaling by I-beam, bandsaw, and now a guy getting his throat ripped out.
Yeah.
Those are the 3 sort of standout sort of maneuvers at this point. And then Ryback shows up into the command center. Somehow Stranix gets the drop on him. And then we go into the villain speech. And I'm like, why don't you just shoot this guy? And then, of course, they turn around and they know each other. And I was like, how? From Panama? We never find out, but I guess Panama.
Don't I know you? I think you do.
I think you do.
I was like, you fucking kidding me?
Who are you? Tell us what the fuck's going on.
And all of this time, he's known who he was, and it's never a major plot point.
No.
But now this fight, because that's what has to happen in a Steven Seagal movie. Well, the villain can't just plug his ass.
No.
Put a bullet in his
Got to have the speech. Got to have the bad guy speech at the end of the Republic serial film kind of stuff.
And remember, this is a guy who, when the CIA had sent people to take him out, not only killed the guys who took him out, but sent their fingers to his old boss.
Right.
But no. He has Steven Seagal sit down to watch the end of the world.
Sure, why not? And then they have this conversation where Steven Seagal says, I'm paraphrasing. He says, we're both just puppets playing to the same master. It just, and I'm like, are you talking about God?
No,
I guess he was talking about God. Was he?
No. This is another part where I go back to the CIA guy was kind of in on this. They hint so heavily that he was the one that was responsible for Panama. For whatever went wrong in Panama. Because, we're just puppets of the same master. That would be them working for the same guy. It could just be the military. Irie Prostate just put that in chat. But when you go to what these guys specialize in, one is a SEAL, one is a Jason Bourne, apparently.
Yeah.
That's my takeaway from that, is that they were puppets of that same master, not necessarily the government, not necessarily, because you wouldn't look at somebody who's crazy and trying to steal nukes to sell them on the open market and go, we're the same.
Yeah.
That makes no fucking sense.
Yeah, there's a whole subplot that got either one of two things. It either got badly written or was written out of this movie.
Well, like I said, at this point, the meetup between those two was so reminiscent of the end of Tango and Cash, where they just throw this guy out there who's never been there.
You haven't met my friend yet, but he wants to meet you.
Yeah, so suddenly these two guys know each other and know each other well enough for him to make that statement.
And then they have epic knife fight.
It is not even an epic. That is such a shit knife fight.
It is
so
a shit knife
bad.
fight. I mean, it's supposed to be epic, but it's shit. And then, God,
it's
Steven
like
Seagal,
the smallest sword fight in the world.
But it's with that backhanded sort of like Jeet Kune Do like hand movements and everything.
It was so bad.
Now, just as a side note, Tommy Lee Jones, many years later, would be in a movie where he again shows off his more legitimate, more practiced knife fighting skills in a movie called The Hunted with Benicio del Toro, where he's sort of an ex-military trainer of killers guys, and he has a knife fight. It's actually really good knife fight, unlike this one.
We missed getting to the knife fight because up until the knife fight, Tommy Lee Jones is holding a gun on Steven Seagal.
Mm-hmm.
And this is again, he's killed 2 CIA operatives. He's Jason Bourne, okay?
Yeah.
But he makes the mistake of getting close enough that Steven Seagal can kick the gun out of his hands.
Yeah.
So that they can have their epic knife fights.
I cannot count how many times in TV shows, movies, and otherwise where the guy with the gun gets disabled because he's standing 6 inches away from the guy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why have a gun, you idiot? It is a ranged weapon. Put yourself 6 feet away. That's when you use a gun like that. You don't walk up to him and have a conversation and wait for him to grab it from you.
Well, here's another thing. Did you if you go back to when they go to the personnel file, and they may have even mentioned it before that, but Gary Busey actually says this guy's name to Tommy Lee Jones.
What guy?
Steven Seagal.
Does
He
say
mentions
Steven?
Casey's name.
Yeah.
And Tommy Lee Jones
he
doesn't
never
react.
He doesn't react. Well, they have a long conversation where he reads off his bona fides and his record, and Tommy Lee Jones has no reaction.
No, just no person. This scene bothers me so much.
It's so weird.
There's no reason for them to know each other. They could have left that out. That was some,
or if they're going to plant seeds of them having some kind of connection where they didn't know each other's names, but they would recognize each other on sight or something. They didn't do anything for that either.
No.
Anyway, so they have this stupid knife fight, and then Steven Seagal shoves his thumb in Tommy Lee Jones's eye and then slams his knife into the top of his head.
The slamming of the knife is one of my favorite parts of this movie.
Oh, it's so
because
fake.
that is cheesy on the level of Nightmare on Elm Street. It's
so and like I say, comparatively, most of the action in this movie is just guys getting shot, not a lot of blood, that kind of thing. But the bandsaw, the impaling, the throat tearing out, and especially the last thing with the knife getting shoved in the head and the eye, and the thumb in the eyeball, I'm like, Jesus, this is gratuitous. I thought this is gratuitous, and I've seen a lot of shit since then. But I'm thinking back to what it was like to see this stuff back in the early 90s when this wasn't common. This was R-rated stuff. You didn't see this stuff except in R-rated movies, and you would never have seen it anything lower than that. Now PG-13 can have all types of shit. Nobody cares.
Now we come to the part of the movie. Oh yeah, well, there's two really big parts of this movie that piss me off. At this moment in the movie, I should say. First, we have the disabling of the nukes.
Yeah. One is shot down by the actual the fighter pilots.
The fucking airplane takes out a Tomahawk missile.
Right, because that works.
But they missed the second one.
Yeah.
But if you saw the Gulf War footage, or any missile footage since then, you will notice that our missiles, while they do, they move and stuff, they can fly. They take very wide berths.
Yes.
This fucking thing is turning on a dime.
Yeah.
It like, oh god damn.
Oh,
like, no.
there's also a side thing. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
And it's skimming the water.
Yeah.
No,
that's not how that works.
Bye, sweetie. I love you. Bye, baby. I see you tomorrow. I love you. She's just looking at me.
Pop goes the weasel. All right.
Pop goes the weasel. Bye, guys. Love you much. Sorry. Keep going.
I was going to say one side note, something that bugged me. Now, I'm not a military guy. I've never been in the military. My father was in the military. I know a lot of people who were in the military. Something that bugged me over the course of this movie is when they're relaying numbers to one another, like when they're talking about codes and things like that. They say 5. They say 9. It's supposed to be 5er, 9er, because when you're doing stuff like this over a radio, you have to be clear. And when you have numbers that sound similar, you have to be able to enunciate them differently to distinguish, because you don't know what the other guy's hearing on the other side of the radio. So you have to be very specific. And they always say 5, 9. And it's just like, no, this is the military. They would be saying something more, that's at least I think they should.
Fucking Jack Cochran. No, Ryback and Jones knew each other's faces from a Turkish bathhouse. No names. Just anonymous love.
We're one and the same, you and I. I was in your butt once. Oh, yeah.
So
anyway.
this missile is right on maybe 10 feet off the water.
Yeah.
And it is turning on a dime, and he gets the code punched in at the last minute, and it
and yay, we saved Honolulu. Yay. And everybody cheers in the command room. Yay. And then we release the guys from the brig. Yay.
And the little CIA guy slinks off, never to be heard from again.
Yeah, exactly. And we have this big celebration.
Yeah, we cut to the celebration, and there was a part very early in the movie that we didn't mention where
Yeah, the dancing guy.
yeah, Ryback tells somebody, "Show me some moves," and the guy dances. And so at this point, the guy looks at him with Ryback, "Show me some moves," and he goes, "What does he say? I don't know about moves."
He says, how about this move? And then he kisses Erika Eleniak.
It is, and it is such an awkward kiss.
It's so creepy. It's actually like, no.
Yeah,
No.
it is. It's like no.
At no point in this entire movie did I get any sense of a romance chemistry between these two.
No. And
I mean,
the kiss
a
didn't help
reliance,
that.
her reliance on him, sure, just for safety. But there was never like a quiet moment where they talked about anything or established anything outside of just, this is an emergency situation, we're running around. And all of a sudden he like leans in and smooches her. Like, that is so, that's so
and
cringy.
it is not a good kiss. It's
no,
not.
It's not. It's awful.
Oh.
And then
And
we
then-
end with the funeral.
Yes.
I
And
presume
they're
for the
all,
captain. I presume for the captain.
well, he's obviously the one in the casket that we see,
Mm-hmm.
but it's probably for all lives lost.
Sure.
And yeah, it ends with him. And this is the part that my father would have lost his fucking mind.
Uh-oh.
And this is one I don't know if you'd even notice. When Steven Seagal gives his salute,
Mm-hmm.
his hand is not straight. His
Uh-oh.
pinky is slightly higher than his ring finger, which is slightly higher than his other two. And that is not how you fucking salute.
Also, this is the first time that Ryback wears his dress uniform,
Yes.
even though it's not his white uniform; it's his black uniform. And
Well,
Playmate of the Year is off there in
wait.
some like swabby outfit.
We need to back up because the
Okay.
outfit that they show him wearing on the cover box
Mhm.
is an officer's uniform. The navy choker whites, that is an officer's uniform. He is a
Yes.
chief. The suit they show him in at the end is what he would wear to a formal event.
Okay, all right. This is me not knowing. Okay.
The Navy, they do have a white uniform for
Yes.
chiefs, your NCOs, and your enlisted. But it's not. Actually, it's for chief and above. Sorry, but it's not the Navy choker white. The choker white is the one you see that like Tom Cruise wearing at the end of Top Gun when they're having their celebration.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for officers.
Well, I see, but a black uniform would not show up very well on a black background of a poster where you have to superimpose Steven Seagal's head over the neckline.
True. But yeah, that salute at the end would have drove my dad nuts. Anytime somebody saluted on TV and they fucked it up, my dad would have a foul.
And Erika Eleniak, for some reason, is allowed to be there as a civilian in a swabby outfit, standing in line with a bunch of the other Navy guys.
Yeah, that's another thing that happens throughout this movie. Before we get to the terrorism part, there's a lot of interactions with commanders and higher up, and there are many portions in there where there should have been a salute that just never happened.
Okay.
Like I said, my dad would have hated this movie. As a Navy brat, I'm not as familiar. I'm not as tied to it.
Mm-hmm.
But there were several things in here like my dad would fucking hate that. Despite what you've heard me say throughout this whole thing, I actually did like the movie. It is dumb.
Yes.
It is so dumb.
It is very dumb, but it's entertaining.
It is. It's a very entertaining movie.
Yeah. If you can just let your brain go for about an hour and a half, you're okay.
Yeah. It's similar to so many of the one. This is the first one we've covered that's not a buddy cop movie. I mean, it kind of is because Titty Girl's her buddy cop. But it's, what is that?
I don't know. What is that? That's on your side.
It's something outside my house. It sounds like somebody's dragging something.
Well, I hope it's not a body.
Oh, it's too loud to be a body. There wouldn't be anything left at this point. Anyway, it's just stupid, and you have to suspend disbelief.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as bad as some. It's really not. There's some movies out there where it's pitiful. You cannot watch it. Jean-Claude Van Damme movies come to mind.
Well, except for Bloodsport,
Shit.
which I have purchased.
I gotta get it. I do. I have to.
So there's something I wanted to mention real quick, and I talked about. So there was a sequel to this movie,
which I've never seen.
Yeah, and there's a reason. There's a reason. So there's a sequel. So like 3 years later, they made a sequel to this in 1995, which was, it seemed like a lifetime. because, and I remember this as clear as day, the first time I ever saw the trailer for this movie, which is called Under Siege 2, Dark Territory. They start out the trailer, and I haven't seen the trailer in 20 years, at least, if not longer. And so this is from memory, but they start out the trailer by saying, you know, this train has been hijacked. And only one man can save the day. And they don't say the character's name. They say the cook from Under Siege. And I'm like, what?
I have seen that.
The cook from Under Siege. Like, that's how they introduce the character. They don't go like Detective McClane is back. You know, they go the cook from Under Siege. I'm like, so that is how well you have cemented this character into the American consciousness. You know you can't trust on the name to remind anybody who the fuck this guy's supposed to be. Because first and foremost, it's not on a boat. He's not wearing a naval uniform at any point. It's just Steven Seagal. So you have to distinguish that this is a Steven Seagal movie that's actually a sequel. But you can't say the name because nobody remembers his character's name, so you have to say the cook from Under Siege.
I just brought up the information. I have seen that. That movie was god awful. I saw it when it first came out. Yeah,
it was so bad. But it makes it sound like he's a cameo. Because if you say if you're like watching an episode of Friends, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's the bartender from Love Boat.
Right.
It's just like, oh shit, it was so bad. So don't see Under Siege 2 Dark Territory. Even though I do like Eric Bogosian as an actor, and he is the villain in this. He's a weird villain, and it's a bad movie. Don't see it.
This one though, I would still recommend watching it, even as bad as it is. The plot holes. It's still a fun movie. Plus, you get to see Erica's titties.
And honestly, for what it was, Tommy Lee Jones was fun to watch. Gary Busey was even fun to watch in some places.
You know what? He didn't come off as the crazy dick. He plays two people, either an entirely irrelevant character that you don't care about, kind of like in Point Break. That could have been anybody. Or he is the fucking nutso psycho. Yeah. And in this one, he's actually just a normal character. And so
relatively speaking, for Gary Busey, a normal Gary Busey character. I have a recommendation at some point, a movie that we should do.
What's that?
So when I saw Gary Busey in this, and I had honestly forgotten that Gary Busey was in this until it showed up, I was reminded of what I think, and legitimately, I'm not being facetious when I say this, one of the best performances Gary Busey has ever given in a movie called Surviving the Game, with Ice-T. It's got, so let me give you the cast list and you tell me if we shouldn't watch this movie. Ice-T, Gary Busey, Rutger Hauer, F. Murray Abraham, and Dr. Cox from Scrubs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, and plus Charles S. Dutton from Rock, remember, and from Alien 3. Yeah, so Surviving the Game is actually one of my favorite action movies of all time. It's not very well known. I believe it was either a very brief theatrical run or maybe a very brief straight to video, but it is awesome. If you haven't seen it, if you can find a copy, can't recommend it more highly. And I'm being legit here. It's great. It is great. And there's this Gary Busey part in the beginning where he does this monologue thing in one cut. And it is one of the most intense things I've ever seen an actor do on screen. And I think Gary Busey should have gotten an Oscar nod for it, honestly. It was so good. Anyway.
I also have to say, this is probably my favorite one we've done so far.
Oh, yeah?
Because neither one of us came into it with any strong feelings.
Yeah, I mean, I remembered it as something that I watched and I was entertained by as a kid. I remember all like Tommy Lee Jones getting knocked back by the shockwave. Erika Eleniak, of course, just makes it all worthwhile for that 5-second shot. It was a fun popcorn movie for me as a kid, but I hadn't seen it like I said in 25 years or something.
Yeah, I kind of want to do Next of Kin since it's on in our list.
Sure. I've never seen that. I have no idea. Yeah, it's Patrick Swayze.
I think it would be fun. Yeah, I think it would be fun to do one. I'll tell you what. I'll let you pick, and I'll probably have to skip next weekend because I'm not going to get to my question. Well, let me ask: are we going to get to our question and answer one today, babe? Babe,
what?
Did you want to do the question and answer stream today, or do you want to put it off till next week?
We should do it today.
Okay, so I'm going to do that today. So we can do it next week. I'll let you pick. We can either do Unknown or Next of Kin, because I've never seen either.
You know, with Liam Neeson retiring from action, I think we should watch. I haven't seen Unknown either.
Oh, cool. So let's do Unknown. How about that?
Yeah, let's do Unknown. So yeah, in honor of Liam Neeson retiring from action movies, so he says, we'll do Unknown because it is unknown to both Monkey and myself.
And I want to point this out. We're doing movies you should have watched on a movie we didn't watch.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we don't call the next episode that.
No, well, no, I'm still going to call it that.
Anything else you want to? Go ahead.
In this case, I mean it. If you haven't seen Under Siege, watch it. It's fun. Yeah, there's parts that are incredibly stupid, but that's part of the fun of movies. I miss that about movies.
Mm-hmm.
I like my plot holes to be filled. The last Boy Scout did it so well, where they set things up and they called it back well. This one doesn't do it that well.
No,
but it's still fucking fun. It's just fun.
It's fun to watch. That's all it is.
Good popcorn movie. But other than that, no, I don't have anything else. So sometime later today, guys, I will do my best to give you a little bit of a heads up. We're going to do the questions people had for me after my 1 year.
Okay.
And of course, tonight we are on your channel for the Scribe and Money Show.
The Scribe and Money Show. As of right now, so far as we know, SDA might be out because she's sick. She wasn't feeling well last night, so it might be just the two of us. Anybody who's listening to this prior to tonight's stream, if you have ad requests, I would ask that you send them to me via Twitter early, because I might not have the ability to do them during the live stream as effectively if there's just Monkey and myself. So just a warning there for those of you who are ad crazy. Sanguine, I'm looking at you. But unless we have something else to mention, I think that's about it.
Me and Lady Monkey just settled on time. We will be going live at about 6:30.
6:30 Eastern time.
Yes. 6:30 Eastern.
So if you want to see Monkey, go to Monkey's channel to watch his 1 year Q&A session with. Is Lady Monkey going to be reading the questions live on the air?
Yes. We'll do it. We'll both be set up next to my mic here, and we'll just do it live.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming out. Those of you who joined us, thank you so much for the donations, you guys. Appreciate it. Moderators, thank you for showing up as well. We will see you tonight in one form or another, either on Monkey's channel for the Q&A or back here on my channel for the nightly Lords of the Night. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.